listen to the New Patriotic Party and its leaders. And they argue, quite boldly, that Justice Bafuboni is likely to be a beneficiary of decisions of the Supreme Court on the suspension or eventual removal of the Chief Justice, and therefore must be stopped from sitting as the presiding judge of the Supreme Court. This is the argument they make. But you see, this case is ongoing. There are petitions before the Supreme Court, and they are insisting that the suspended Chief Justice should be reinstated. And if she's reinstated, she will have the power to empanel the court, and she will have the right to sit on the panel. Can you see the logical inconsistency? So in one breath, when it comes to suspended Chief Justice, she has a right to sit on panels to make determinations in petitions before her and the bench over her own case. But as for Justice Bafuboni, he cannot. What logical inconsistency. Unbelievable. And the whole case is replete with logical inconsistencies. This is only one, just to demonstrate the extent of the logical inconsistencies. Now, again, beyond the logical inconsistencies, there is what you may call historical inconsistency. And that's also very interesting. The very people who today are claiming that, look, the president has to take some actions when he receives a petition in order to make the process transparent. The president, for example, ought to ask for the Chief Justice's version of events and so on. Were the very people who 8 years ago were arguing very strongly that the president only acts as a conveyor belt. Now, their argument is that the president is no longer a conveyor belt. When he gets a petition, he has to read the petition, he has to ask for the version of the person against whom a petition has been made, and has to make a determination about the weight of the petition, even before reference to the Council of State. What historical inconsistency is this? Unbelievable. But they have no shame. They go on and do this, and they do it in our face with raised shoulders and so on. And I'm very worried, about that. Now, when they went through Article 146, and we've gone through Article 146 several times today, I don't intend to go through Article 146, and found that the president could not be faulted on adherence to the provisions of Article 146, they then just quickly jumped to Article 296. Very interesting. It has only 3 provisions, so I can read it. It's not long. It says, where in this Constitution or in any other law discretionary power is vested in any person or authority, A, that discretionary power shall be deemed to imply a duty to be fair and candid. Fair and candid. Underline those words. B, the exercise of the discretionary power shall not be arbitrary. And I think you all understand what arbitrary is. Capricious or biased, either by resentment, prejudice, or personal dislike. Personal dislike. And shall be in accordance with due process of law. And C, where the person or authority is not a judge or other judicial officer, there shall be published by a constitutional instrument or statutory instrument regulations that are not inconsistent with the provisions of this constitution or that other law to govern the exercise of the discretionary power. It's clear. Now here is the analysis. If you look at Article 146, Article 146 insists that at every stage, the president ought to be acting in consultation with the Council of State. And that in the final stages, the decision of the 5-member committee is mandatory. The president has no discretion in that matter. He cannot say yes or no to any part of the recommendations of the 5-member committee. That's clear. So show me where personal interest and bias lies in this matter. First, look at the Council of State. The Council of State is made up of representatives of 16 regions. Elected, thank you Sohini, elected, 16 regions. It is made up of personalities, including the former Speaker of Parliament, who now sits as Chairman of the Council, and a former Chief Justice, and others who are deemed to be representing institutions like the Police Service, the Ghana Armed Forces, and so on. National House of Chiefs, and so on. So show me how these ingredients in Article 296 can be manifest in the actions of the president. It is not possible. Personal interest can never arise. Personal prejudice can never arise. Because Article 146 itself has all the ingredients to check against what is described in 296, which devalues the essence of the exercise of discretion. So what are they talking about? I can't understand. I just can't understand. The only way you can understand what they are saying is to listen to them and to take them serious. And if you listen to them and you take them serious, they are not worried about legality or the Constitution. Their prime objective is to play politics. Okay. And in playing that politics, they cannot rely on the Constitution. They cannot rely on Article 146 or even 296 to play the politics. They can rely only on their imagination, their supposition that the president may run for a third term. That's the only way. Now, there's something else which is extremely interesting. I'm sure you've all listened to them. They say, look, our worry is not so much about the sitting Chief Justice. Our real worry is that if we succeed, if we allow the government or the constitutional processes to end up in the removal of the Chief Justice, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission may follow. So let's stop it now. You know that? And that is interesting. Let us say, for the purposes of discussion, let us say that at the end of the day, evidence is established to show that the Chief Justice was incompetent, and that the Chief Justice engaged in acts of misbehavior grave enough to warrant her removal. Let us say that that is established. It may not be the case, but just in case that becomes the case, you understand, I will say that because the Chief Justice may have abused her office and so on, if another head of a constitutional institution misbehaves, does acts for which the Constitution calls for impeachment, the person should be left
untouched.
Is that the argument? Where is the sense in it? No sense. No sense. Complete no sense. So if the Chief Justice has misbehaved, has done acts of omission or commission which the Constitution insists, for which the Constitution insists he must be removed from office, and she's removed from office, if any other person heading or being a member of another constitutional institution behaves as the Chief Justice, the person must go.
Yes.
How is it difficult to understand this? Now they are hoping by raising these flags, people would then become immobilized. They are hoping that by raising these flags, when and if the Chief Justice is removed from power, then members of the Electoral Commission and other constitutional bodies will be saved whether they do right or wrong. But that's a daydream. It's a daydream because the Constitution is clear. The Constitution does not say that when you remove the Chief Justice, you cannot remove the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. The Commission does not say that if you remove the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, you cannot remove the chairperson of the National Commission on Civic Education, and so on. So they should stop the daydreaming and come face to face with the Constitution and try. And I know they understand the Constitution. You know, it's not that they don't understand the Constitution. They are simply playing the politics that they themselves say they are playing, and it is clear. But so the other thing they have done is to come up and say, look, what is contained in the petitions are frivolous. How do you remove a whole Chief Justice for the reasons contained in the petitions? Now I'm sitting here and I cannot say for sure that what has been published as the petitions are the petitions. I don't know. But some material has been published as the petitions, upon which people are making all kinds of arguments. So let us assume, for the purpose of this discussion, that what we are seeing as the petitions are indeed the petitions. And I hear them saying that in Tree, I mean, one of them said in Tree, that somebody has written a petition, a former police officer who is a lawyer has written a petition, and that what the petition seeks to do is to get the Chief Justice removed because the Chief Justice reprimanded him. That's false. Completely false. The petition which I have read says that the Chief Justice on her own, not as head of the panel, on her own, after the case had been determined, ordered his arrest and detention arbitrarily and illegally. That is the gravamen of the petition. Now, is anybody telling me that the arbitrary arrest and detention of a citizen is a light matter? It is not. It's a grave matter. It may well be that this committee may come up and say that, look, it is not true that the Chief Justice arbitrarily ordered the detention, illegal detention of this police officer, and therefore the Chief Justice should come back to her work. That's for the committee to decide. It's not me who is going to decide that. But the allegation is grave enough to lead to the determination of a prima facie case. You understand what I'm saying? So they bastardized the petition in order for the petition to look frivolous. The other day, I saw somebody else standing, not sitting on television, actually standing on television, and saying that they say that the Chief Justice took $10,000 per diem for her daughter to go abroad and so on. But how can we be so cheap that the Chief Justice actually refunded part of the money? And that in other instances, people travel and they don't refund anything at all. So rather than castigate the Chief Justice, we should be praising her. Wow, is that the issue? Is this a frivolous matter? I don't know. The committee will decide. But we should allow the committee to decide. Now, if you read Article 146, it is clear, even the casual reading of Article 146 shows that the drafters of the Constitution intended the process to be confidential. Everything about Article 146 indicates very clearly that that whole process needs to be confidential. And if you want, I'll read it. I don't think it's necessary to read. Now, I believe firmly that there's a reason why the drafters of the Constitution decided that the processes ought to be in camera and ought to be in confidence. Now, the reason is that at the end of the process, that is the determination of the 5-member committee, the Chief Justice may be removed from office or may go back to office. Okay. Now, I think that the drafters of the Constitution were minded by the fact that if you're going to have a Chief Justice go back to office, she should not suffer reputational damage from the trial. So that Article 146 is intended to protect the Chief Justice from reputational damage. And that is why Article 146 makes sure or insists that things should be done in camera and in confidence. Now, friends of the New Patriotic Party are saying, no, open the hearing to television. Let's view it live on television and so on. What is the implication of that? Just imagine the kinds of allegations which can be made, some frivolous, some substantial and so on, against the Chief Justice. At the end of the day, if the committee comes and says, oh, the Chief Justice is clean, she can go back to work and so on, there will be lingering doubts in the public mind about her integrity and so on. And that becomes a burden that may not allow her to perform her duties, to the extent that the Constitution envisages and so on. But our friends from the New Patriotic Party say, damn everything, stamp on everything. Publish the petitions, publish the Chief Justice's response. Let's have open public hearings and so on. And they even go to the extent of saying that the Council of State's determination of a prima facie case should be published. When indeed, all deliberations of the Council of State are not public. Given the very nature of the matters that go before the Council of State and so on, they are not public. And they are designed not to be public in order to protect the national interest. Because the Council of State discuss weighty issues about national security and so on. But you see, this one is how do you say, is it a clanger or something? You people who speak English better than me. Clanger. They are saying that Supreme Court, Mrs. Supreme Court, not Supreme Court, Council of State decisions should be made public. We should even know the reasons behind their determination of a prima facie case to help with national security interest and so on. They are saying that. Then the Attorney General, and here we have to be very careful because it's a matter before the courts. And the likelihood of contempt is very high. And I'm going to be very, very careful not to cross the boundaries. Charges have been preferred against Mr. Edubuahini, that's his name, I suppose. And then his lawyer writes a letter to the National Security Coordinator and says that stop this trial. Because if you don't stop this trial, matters of national security will become public. So when it comes to the criminal trial of a suspect, because matters of national security may become public, don't even try him at all. They're not even saying that try him in camera, but don't try him at all. Wow. But when it comes to the determination of a prima facie case against a certain Chief Justice, waive everything including national security consideration and so on and make it public. It doesn't make sense to me. Now, one of the things that we are told can become public if the state insists on trying Edubuahini is a list of people who are in opposition to the MPP but who are eating from the bowl of the MPP, who are collecting monies from the security.
People have eaten.
Master, I think that is a very good reason for the trial to continue.